Hello, and welcome to today's podcast, Managing Through a Crisis, Seasoned Advice for Local Government Managers. I'm Joel Storo, past president and now senior principal of McGill. Over the 36-year history of our firm, McGill has advised local government leaders on a wide variety of challenges and the common interest of improving the communities in which we live. Indeed, McGill's tagline is shaping communities together. We understand that there is an overload of information out there right now, webinars and a variety of other forms of communications. At this juncture, we're all being bombarded by information from many different sources. Our goal in these podcast offerings is to do something different as a service to our clients. We prepared this 15-minute podcast to best offer you the seasoned advice of former local government managers on how to confidently manage through this, the COVID-19 crisis. Our team for today's discussion is Robert Hyatt, Greg Kelly, and Gary Jackson. Together, they have over 100 years of experience in local government management in multiple jurisdictions, including a proven track record for overcoming setbacks from the Great Recession, 9/11, and other challenging times. I have personally learned a great deal from these colleagues of mine, and I hope you will too. Today, you will hear about 6 guiding principles for managing through a crisis. These principles are: lead by example, show compassion, communicate, collaborate, budget strategically, and last but not least, take care of yourself. Now let me call on my colleagues to explain how we came up with this list. Robert Hyatt worked in county government for 34 years, including 16 years as manager of Davidson County, North Carolina. Robert, what advice would you give our managers today on leading by example?
First and foremost, remain calm, even if you're scared to death. In times of crisis, citizens, employees, and even your own elected officials become anxious, fearful, uncertain about safety, security of their families and themselves. Using social media often highlight the worst case scenarios. People are looking to someone they trust who will be honest and help them through the difficult times ahead. That someone has to be you. Robert, that sounds right. What specific bits of advice would you have? Be positive, confident, but realistic. Do not make commitments you or your organization cannot keep. Everyone is watching, and unkept commitments will come back to haunt you. Be a great listener, an observer, and engage as needed. Keeping employee morale up is vitally important, and stopping the spread of rumors, misinformation, in the public is a must. Managers should communicate with employees, citizens, and elected leaders early and often. Be present, visible, and accessible. Today, many organizations have public information officers to share information in emergency situations. I believe these are great for sharing public notices, facts, and figures. However, in times of crisis, when everyone is fearful and stressed out, they need to hear from someone they know and trust. It may be the mayor or possible board chair you have well prepared, but most likely it will be you. Remember, in crisis, the media is always looking for a story. If they do not talk to you, they're going to speak to someone. Will that person share the message you want told? Do not take that chance. Be flexible and adaptive. Current policies, procedures, and practices may not work. Be open to change. Be appreciative. Give praise every opportunity you have to those helping your community get through this crisis. Celebrate successes modestly whenever you can. Thanks, Robert. That's great advice. Now I'm going to turn to Greg Kelly, who served 30 years for Abingdon, Virginia, both as town manager and town attorney. Greg, this is really a challenging time for many people, including our employees. How should managers address their concerns?
Thank you, Joel. I would offer that as we sail into the uncharted waters of the time, compassion for the crew that keeps the ship afloat and moving forward is as important as ever. Hopefully, you've had the opportunity to surround yourself with a really good crew, but there are still many in the organization who have doubts and fears of the stormy waters ahead. So expressing empathy to each other and understanding each other's context is extremely important at this time. By way of example, think of someone in your organization who has elderly parents in a fragile state of health. Think of how it is to them under those circumstances that we lend a compassionate ear for them to express their concerns. They're going to be extremely concerned about relatives at this time when the virus is potentially affecting the most vulnerable and medically challenged in our communities. So we need to embrace and acknowledge their emotions and concerns while also helping to address them. The time off, if they want to work from home, or if they simply need a little space to look after their family members, I urge you, please review your personnel policies and the adequacy of your employee assistance programs and provide the flexibility they need until the stormy waters settle. In short, Joel, employee communications, especially projecting compassion to all levels of employees, is critical at this time.
All really good points, Greg. I'd like to introduce Gary Jackson now. Gary has over 40 years of local government experience across a number of jurisdictions, including city manager for Fort Worth and most recently 13 years as city manager for Asheville. He's got a wealth of knowledge, and I know, Gary, communities are looking for facts on how the virus will affect services in their lives. With so much information and misinformation out there, what is the actual role of the city or county manager in this situation?
Joel, I think it's really important to do the things that both Greg and Robert mentioned, but it's also really important for managers to do their best to stay informed on emerging developments and policy issues. They need to interpret them well. It's also important for managers to remind everyone how the community has been through difficult times before. The key message here is to communicate that your organization will continue to provide essential services. Prior emergency management experience has taught us the importance of regional coordination and unified communications. This is a good time to remind everyone how preparedness plans are already in place. Also remind them how employees have proven abilities to execute them and solve almost any problem. The Great Recession of 2008 really drove home how especially important it is for managers to keep those employees well informed. We witnessed firsthand how difficult it was for employees to do their best work if they were worrying about their job security. During the pandemic, employees are worried about not only their job security, they're worried about their health and the wellness of their families. Efforts to prevent the spread of the coronavirus will present new challenges for employee communications. It may be a long time before managers can communicate with employee groups in large gatherings. So managers will need to become even more savvy with communication technology and the applications available to extend their reach. I would be making video recordings, Joel. I would be posting regular updates on social media, and I would be doing a weekly newsletter on an internal intranet. Collaborative tools like Microsoft Teams and conferencing solutions like Zoom also enable managers to centralize all information and put it at the fingertips of every employee with a smartphone. And finally, Joe, it may sound like old school, but managers still need to have an open door policy. Employees should feel comfortable bringing concerns and suggestions to their manager. I believe letting employees know you're approachable is extremely beneficial for the organization.
Gary, I would agree wholeheartedly with keeping the lines of communication open. In fact, our company, as you know, has been using Microsoft Teams pretty routinely in a lot of our communication, and it's really been effective. I'm going to bring Greg back into the conversation now. Greg, what would your thoughts be on how to open up those lines of communication?
Joel, going back to my analogy earlier, you're not going to know all the answers and when the stormy waters are going to calm. No one really expects us to know that. But nonetheless, since we're all in the storm together, we need to find creative ways to ride it out. This is a time for you to call on all of your resources, the capabilities of all your employees, all of your team members, and bring them together in teams and task forces. Having a role for everyone in overcoming the crisis enables them to contribute in a meaningful way. This is something which really motivates true public servants. Engaging employees in this way will also reduce the rumor mill and give them confidence that they will then project to the other people who are relying on them as managers for direction. People in the organization at all levels want a role and they want to contribute. So please give them those opportunities. Wise managers have always taken advantage of the diversity and depths of talents in their organizations in times of crisis. Joel, through the trust and collaboration of your crew, you will eventually find still waters again.
Well, that really makes sense to me, Greg. If our experiences through the last Great Recession are any indication, we are going to need everybody's contribution to close future budget gaps. I'm going to turn now to a topic that I'm sure is on the minds of many managers out there, that of budgeting for this coming year and future years. Gary, what recommendations do you have for addressing the financial challenges that this virus has created?
I hate to say it, Joel, but I'm afraid no one is going to go unscathed from this downturn. Until now, the 2008 Great Recession was the biggest economic blow of our lifetime. It hurt financially, but this is bigger and it will hurt more and it will really test managers. Property taxes, the biggest chunk of revenue for cities and counties, are unlikely to be immediately affected by the downturn. In contrast, sales tax revenues are plummeting. They may deliver major blows to budgets for years to come. That's what Michael Walden, North Carolina State University, said. He predicts it will take at least a year to get back to how the economy was before the virus. Consequently, Paul Meyer, the executive director of the North Carolina League of Municipalities, is advising local governments to expect a 30 to 35% reduction in sales tax calculations. I think sales tax numbers will vary significantly depending upon the local mix of sales tax generators. Communities with large national retail stores like Lowe's, Home Depot, Target, and Walmart may be okay. The local economies built on small business or tourism are likely to suffer more. For fiscal year 2021 budgets, many managers can merely offset sales tax losses by using many of the tactics that we used successfully in 2009. These measures would include delaying some capital purchases, leaving certain seasonal positions unfilled, and implementing a hiring freeze for non-public safety or what some would define as non-essential positions.
Well, Gary, that sounds pretty good for the upcoming year. Makes me wonder, though, if this downturn continues over multiple years, what specific advice would you give then?
Yeah, that's right. These measures alone are unlikely to fully offset sales tax losses, which will result from an extended and depressed period of consumer spending. Borrowing from our experiences during the slow economic recovery after the Great Recession, I would encourage today's managers to get started immediately on multi-year strategies that will offset the revenue losses. In 2009, for example, in the city of Asheville, we started future budget planning well in advance of the normal timetable. Perhaps the best decision we made was to involve all our managers and supervisors in a budget planning session after only 4 months into the new fiscal year. Our employees really appreciated being included and enthusiastically formed teams to brainstorm budget balancing options. The resulting process definitely improved our decision-making. I think there was also more employee acceptance for the budget sacrifices, and they had to be made by every department eventually. Joel, if I could only make one single budget suggestion, it would be to use multi-year financial forecasting and to use it to guide planning for future budgets. After all, employees, elected bodies, and the entire community, they're counting on managers to lead, not just emotionally, but prudently with respect to the long-term finances of the organization. The Governmental Finance Officers Association recommends using a 5-year forecast as a starting point for every annual budget process. Let me just say, if there ever was a time for local government managers to heed this advice, that time is now.
Gary, I wholeheartedly agree, and I think there are going to be many challenges and tough decisions to be made for at least the next couple of years. I remember when you were a city manager there at Asheville, you did a great job in looking out over multiple years and trying to help the elected official make the proper decisions. And it's never more important than it is right now, sure seems. It would make sense to strategically plan for all the possibilities and come up with multiple scenarios for future budgets. Turning back to Robert, do you have any additional advice for our managers today?
Sometimes in crisis situations, we become so consumed trying to help everyone else that we forget the importance of taking time to take care of ourselves. With today's technology, we are always connected. Someone is constantly reaching out, wanting a problem solved or question answered, no matter where you are, day or night. Before long, your body will protest in one way or the other through stress, sickness, or behavior change. Your body and mind deserve rest, food, and relaxation. Recognize and address these needs before you crash and are of no value to your organization, family, or yourself. Also, don't forget key members of your organization are watching what you do. If you're trying to be Superman, guess what? They most likely will follow your lead. Be sure to relay to them the need for taking care of themselves, and then you have to practice what you preach. Joel, here are just a few reminders to help sustain yourself in your leadership role. Watch what you consume. Eat healthy, well-balanced meals. Drink in moderation if you drink alcohol. Exercise. Do it regularly or at least take a walk. Get plenty of sleep. Connect with others. Share your concerns and how you're feeling with a friend or family member. Maintain healthy relationships and build a strong support system. Take breaks. Make time to unwind and to remind yourself that you can do this. Try taking in deep breaths. And finally, try to do activities you usually enjoy.
Thanks, Robert. That's all great advice. And I think of all the topics we covered today, that may be the most important one of all. As we conclude this podcast, I want to leave with y'all the key points that we emphasized today, and that would be encouragement to lead by example, showing compassion, communicate early and often, collaborate, budget strategically, and of course, take care of your personal self as well. We look forward to sharing our next podcast on a relevant topic with you in the near future. And in the meantime, stay safe and healthy.